Shelby, North Carolina. Population 21,758 people. This town is located in south central Cleveland County. The place isn't known for a lot, though it has been the scene for a lot of major films, such as the reaping scene in 2012's The Hunger Games, or some may know it for the handful of pro ball players and musicians that once called this place home. Sadly, in present day it's known for the disappearance of a 9-year-old girl who would vanish without a trace. And when she goes missing, the normally quiet town would be filled with voices searching for Asha Degree, or who the town now knows as Shelby Sweetheart. But in due time, the voices that once filled the area frantically searching for Asha would be replaced with whispers. Whispers about what happened. August 5th, 1990. The world would make way for Asha Degree. She was brought into this world by her parents Harold and Aquila Degree. Her parents had met in North Carolina and then eventually married in 1988 on Valentine's Day. 1 year later, they brought forth a son. 2 years later is when Asha would enter this world. From early on, Asha is described as someone who was sweet, giving, someone who was also well behaved. She's also described as someone who always brandished a smile, someone who was energetic, funny, and she also thought highly of what others thought of her. A constant in Asha's life was keeping those around her happy and happy with her. If you were upset with her, she would do anything to get inside of your good grace. By the time Asha was 9 years old, she would still be residing in Shelby, North Carolina, and attending Falston Elementary. It's here that the fourth grader is described as someone who was eager to learn, a well-behaved student, and she was also athletic, playing both baseball and basketball. Outside of schooling, the majority of her time would be spent with her brother and family. She was also raised in a strict household. Due to the dangers of the world, the family didn't allow a computer in the home, at least not a computer with internet access. They were restricted from watching certain television programs. The family of Asha Degree was your normal, church-going, conservative family. Asha's mother worked for Kauai American Manufacturing, building pianos, while her father worked a night shift as a dock loader. When returning from school, Asha and her brother would normally be home alone, and they would have to let themselves in the house. While home alone, Asha and her brother were expected to do their homework, and then do their chores, and then they would watch TV, waiting on the arrival of their parents. Life for Asha and her brother was a complete cycle. They often repeated the same things day in and day out. However, something was soon to happen that would alter that cycle. 9-year-old Asha Degree would go missing, but she wouldn't go missing while home alone from school. She would go missing while under the umbrella of her parents. In fact, Asha would go missing inside of a full house. February 14th, year 2000, approximately 5:45 a.m. It would be an early Monday morning. The mother would awaken to do her normal routine. She would go inside of her son's room to wake him up to get ready for school. He would be sleeping in his bed. However, upon entering Asha's room, she would discover that Asha wasn't there. Upon witnessing this, the mother would immediately be startled, because it wasn't like Asha. She would check around the home, and then she would check the family vehicles. And after a quick check of the exterior of the home and making phone calls to relatives, she would decide it was time to get the authorities involved. Police would arrive to the home around 6:45 a.m., where Asha Degree would be reported missing. Upon learning about her disappearance, they would bring in the dogs, but the dogs weren't able to catch a scent. After canvassing the area and not finding Asha, they would move to phase 2, interviewing the family and friends, trying to get an idea of what transpired before her disappearance. Sunday, February 13th, year 2000, approximately one day before the disappearance of Asha. The family describes the day as normal. They went to church, and then after church, they would go to a relative's home for lunch. They would then return home. After returning from the relative's home, the father was scheduled to work that night, so he would prepare himself for work and head out. Later on that night, a major storm would cause an electricity outage, so there would be no power in the home. The mother would light candles in order to see and light up a kerosene lamp to keep warm. Also during this time, Asha's aunt and her children would come over to the home to spend time with them during the blackout. Around 9:30 p.m., the kids would be put to sleep, and then the mother describes herself as dozing off on the couch, only to be awakened at 12:30 a.m. when the electricity comes back on. By the time the electricity is back on, her father is now home from work. He describes himself as coming home, taking a shower, and then he would stay up for a little bit. But then he says around 2:30 a.m. he would prepare himself for bed. He would go to check on the kids, and then he would go to sleep. Hours later, at 6:45 a.m., is when Asha would be reported missing. During the interviews of the family, they didn't find any crucial clues or anything to hint to the whereabouts of Asha. With no clues and no evidence to point towards her whereabouts, it was proving to be difficult to find her. They would do the only thing they could do, and that would be to reach out to the media to spread the word about her disappearance. As word began to spread, two people would come forward, claiming to have seen Asha between the hours of 3 o'clock and 4 a.m. on the morning of February 14th of year 2000. A trucker will report that at around 3:15 a.m., he saw a girl walking along Highway 18 in between Shelby and Falston. He says that this female was wearing all white and she was walking alone. He says that when he saw the female, he didn't think too much of it. He says that she looked like she knew where she was going, so he really didn't pay it any mind. Alongside the trucker, another motorist would come forward and claim to have seen a young woman walking along Highway 18 at approximately 4 a.m. He says that when he saw the young woman, he attempted to circle around 3 times, but by the time he caught up with her, she had ran off into the woods, and that was the last he saw of her. He says that at this time, the weather conditions were raining and it was dark, so he didn't pursue her. When questioned about why he didn't pursue the young woman, he replies that at that time, he thought he was looking at a grown woman and not a child. But thinking back on the circumstances now and having a missing 9-year-old in the area, he's now thinking that might have been her. By February 15th of year 2000, the authorities were following up on these leads, and they would canvass the area. Alongside the highway of which they have claimed to seen her, they found candy wrappers. Also on that day, a family would come forward and claim to have found some mysterious items inside of their shed. This shed was located in the same area in which the man claimed to have seen a young woman run into the woods. Inside of this shed was found a pencil, a green marker, a yellow hair bow, and an unidentified picture of a little girl. When the family was confronted about the items, they would indeed say that these items belonged to their daughter. However, as for the picture of the missing female, no one knew who she was. The media would release the photo in hopes to generate leads. But after trying to figure out who the girl in the photo was, they couldn't. And it is still to this day no more than a Jane Doe. After the items were discovered, the police would canvass the area. They would even bring in bloodhounds to try and catch a scent of Asha. However, upon arriving on the scene, the dogs once again couldn't find a scent. They were now right back at square one. They had a missing 9-year-old little girl with no clue to her whereabouts. Time would begin to elapse. The days would begin to turn into weeks, and then the weeks would turn into months. By now, the official search for Asha has been called off, and although the police have received over 300 tips, none of them have panned out. They've searched areas, abandoned homes, etc., but nothing was leading them closer to Asha. Roughly 18 months after the disappearance of Asha, they would receive a clue. On August 3rd of 2001, a construction project would begin off of Highway 18, located in Burke County, near Morganton, about 26 miles north of Shelby. While digging in the area, a man would find a book bag wrapped in plastic. On the outside of this book bag was Asha's name and her phone number. Inside of this book bag was found personal items of Asha. They found some pencils, they found clothing, they found a few family photos. They also found a house key and a Dr. Seuss book. When the family was confronted with the items, they would claim some of the items. However, 2 items in the book bag they knew weren't hers. The Dr. Seuss book was checked out from her library at school. However, upon checking records, she wasn't the one to check it out. And there was also a New Kids on the Block t-shirt that her family claims wasn't hers. After making the discovery, the investigators would once again canvass the area. They would bring in the dogs in order to search. But just like the times prior, they didn't catch a scent, and they didn't find any more clues leading to her whereabouts. So even after finding this clue 18 months later, they were still at square one. Time would continue to elapse. And 2001 would be the last year that any official evidence would be found in connection to Asha. The years would begin to fly by. They would often picture her in the media and remind the area that they had a missing girl, referring to her as Shelby's sweetheart. But the efforts did little to help the investigation. The next clue wouldn't come into the year of 2016, when someone would come forward and claim to have seen Asha get into a 1970s Lincoln Continental that was colored dark green. He claims to have seen her get in this vehicle and drive off on the night she went missing. The vehicle description was released to the public, but once again, tips came in, but nothing panned out. Years later, in the year of 2020, the authorities would release a sketch. This sketch is what Asha Degree would look like currently today. This sketch once again generated leads, and someone would come forward with information claiming to know what happened to Asha. Shortly after the sketch was released, a prisoner would come forward, 53-year-old Marcus Mellon. Marcus had contacted the media via letter and claimed to know exactly what happened to Asha and where she's at. He said that he needed to get in contact with the authorities, so the media would relay that information to the investigators. And upon checking this guy out and interviewing him, he tells them what happened, and then he leads the investigators to a certain area, an area that he claims Asha was buried at. So the authorities began to dig, and to their surprise, while digging, they would come across a set of bones. But when the bones were analyzed, they were found to be no more than mere animal bones. And after they found this, they came to the conclusion that Marcus Mellon was wasting their time and that his claims were completely false. The year is now 2024, and Asha Degree still hasn't been found. By now, the court of public opinion has pointed the finger at the family. They pointed the finger at offenders in the area, but nothing ever brought forth any evidence. And with her still missing today, with no clues, her parents still believe she's alive. If you have any information in regards to the case of Asha Degree, please contact the Shelby, North Carolina Police Department and relay the information you know. A family is still waiting to receive justice or receive any type of word on the whereabouts of their daughter. Remember that no detail or clue is too small. Anything you may have witnessed around that time could lead to a big discovery. Again, if you have any information, contact the Shelby, North Carolina authorities.